Welcome back to the Lost Tactician, where we excavate the forgotten ingenuity that allowed civilizations to endure against impossible odds. Today, we're standing in the shadow of ancient structures that have outlasted empires, weathered millennia of rain and rot, and defied every natural law that should have reduced them to dust. The question isn't just how Roman timber survived, it's what precise formulas, what strategic layering of natural compounds allowed their wood to mock the passage of time itself. Think pine tar was their secret? You're about to discover that what the Romans knew about preservation makes our modern chemical solutions look, well, primitive by comparison. Picture yourself standing before the waterlogged timbers of a Roman harbour, excavated after 2,000 years submerged in salt water. The wood is darkened, yes, but structurally sound. Or examine the charred foundation posts of a military fort along Hadrian's Wall, their surfaces still bearing the deliberate scorch marks applied by engineers who understood chemistry before it had a name. These aren't anomalies. They're evidence of a systematized approach to materials science that we're only now beginning to comprehend through archaeological chemistry and microscopic analysis of ancient fibers. The common assumption points immediately to pine tar, that ubiquitous medieval standby, but Roman wood preservation was far more sophisticated. Archaeological evidence reveals trace compounds that shouldn't exist if simple pine resin were the only treatment. We're finding mineral crystals embedded in wood grain, evidence of organic acids that modern timber rarely encounters, and layered applications that suggest a strategic, multi-stage process. The Romans weren't just coating their wood, they were fundamentally transforming its cellular structure to resist the biological and environmental forces that destroyed timber. Recent chemical analysis of Roman timber samples has revealed the presence of alum, potassium aluminum sulfate, penetrating deep into the wood fiber. This mineral compound doesn't just sit on the surface, it bonds with the cellulose, creating an environment hostile to the fungi and bacteria that cause rot. The Romans mined alum extensively, and now we understand why. When applied as a heated solution, it migrates through the wood's capillary system, effectively mineralizing the organic material from within. The timber becomes partially stone, partially plant, a hybrid material that, honestly, confounds natural decomposition. But alum was just one weapon in their arsenal. In regions where petroleum naturally seeped from the earth, places like the Middle East and parts of what is now Romania, Roman engineers coated critical structural timbers with bitumen and natural asphalt. This isn't the refined petroleum product we use today. Ancient bitumen contained complex organic compounds that acted as both waterproofing agents and natural pesticides. Archaeological samples show layers of this material up to several millimeters thick on harbour pilings and bridge supports, creating an impenetrable barrier against water infiltration and marine borers. Then there's the sophisticated use of essential oils and organic resins beyond common pine tar. Cedar oil, extracted through distillation processes the Romans had mastered, contains natural compounds called cedral and thujon, potent insect repellents and antifungal agents. Applied hot and allowed to penetrate the wood, cedar oil doesn't just protect the surface, it permeates the cellular structure, making the entire timber toxic to wood-eating organisms. Excavations of Roman granaries and administrative buildings show timber with cedar oil residues still detectable after 2 millennia. Beeswax and olive oil played roles that modern preservationists are only now appreciating. Beeswax, applied as a final sealant layer, creates a breathable but water-resistant finish that prevents moisture accumulation while allowing the wood to release trapped humidity. Olive oil, particularly when used to soak bridge timbers and structural beams, replaces water in the wood's cell structure, eliminating the medium fungi required to establish themselves. Roman engineers understood empirically what we now know scientifically. Fungi cannot metabolize oil the way they can cellulose. The genius of Roman wood preservation wasn't in any single compound. It was in the orchestrated sequence of treatments that transformed ordinary timber into nearly indestructible building material. Archaeological evidence reveals a standard protocol for foundation posts that involved multiple stages. First, the base of each post was deliberately charred through controlled burning, creating a carbonized surface layer. This carbon shell is chemically inert, impervious to moisture, and toxic to insects. Modern experiments replicating this technique show that charred timber can last centuries even in direct ground contact. But the Romans didn't stop at charring. While the wood was still hot from the charring process, they applied heated pitch or bitumen, which penetrated more deeply into the thermally expanded wood fibers. This created a dual-layer protection, the carbon barrier backed by a waterproof petroleum seal. Then, and this is crucial, they would often embed these treated posts in clay-heavy, water-saturated mud, creating an anaerobic environment that starved aerobic decay organisms of the oxygen they needed to function. This understanding of environmental manipulation extended to their construction philosophy. Roman engineers routinely elevated timber structures on stone foundations, ensuring that wood never made direct contact with ground moisture. They sealed joints with linen or hemp fabric soaked in oil and tar, creating flexible but waterproof connections that could move with the wood's natural expansion and contraction. Every visible seam, every junction point, received attention that speaks to empirical observation refined over generations. So today's conservationists and material scientists are, well, really trying to recreate these ancient formulas, but with, mixed success. The challenge isn't just about identifying the compounds, it's about understanding the precise sequences, the temperatures, and the timing that made them so effective in the first place. For example, a research team in Italy recently replicated the alum treatment on modern timber, and found, remarkably, that it increased rot resistance by over 300% compared to untreated wood. Meanwhile, another group, working with natural bitumen sourced from ancient deposits, discovered that its complex organic composition actually outperformed modern synthetic preservatives in marine environments. The implications extend far beyond historical curiosity. As we search for sustainable alternatives to toxic chemical preservatives like chromated copper arsenate, these ancient Roman formulas offer proven, environmentally benign solutions. Cedar oil, alum, and beeswax are biodegradable, non-toxic to humans and wildlife, and, well, demonstrably effective over time frames that absolutely dwarf modern building codes. We're witnessing a convergence where ancient empirical wisdom meets contemporary environmental necessity. The Roman approach to wood preservation reveals something fundamental about pre-industrial materials. Science, it was holistic, observational, and refined through countless generations of trial and failure. These weren't just lucky guesses, they were systematic applications of natural chemistry, tested across the vast geography of an empire, and adapted to local conditions and available resources. As we face our own materials challenges, seeking durability without environmental devastation, longevity without toxicity, the Roman formulas offer more than historical fascination. They provide a roadmap to sustainable preservation that has already proven itself across, honestly, 2 millennia. The timber they treated still stands as testimony to knowledge we're only now recovering. If this glimpse into ancient materials science has sparked your curiosity about how our ancestors survived, built, and endured, hit that like button and subscribe to The Lost Tactician. We're excavating the forgotten techniques that kept civilizations alive and discovering that, the old ways often knew something we've forgotten. Share this with anyone who believes that modern solutions are always superior to ancient wisdom. Sometimes the future of preservation lies buried in the past.